Imagine living on a 42-foot sailboat with your husband, your dog, and another couple while chasing adventure across the open seas. My guest today traveled from New York to the Bahamas on a 42-foot sailboat, and I am so excited to have her on and hear all about it. I'm Patti Hunt, and you're listening to Inspired Travels with Patti. Today is going to be an exciting interview because the idea of sailing on a sailboat for a couple weeks sounds amazing, and my guest did it for 6 months. When I first heard about this adventure and I saw pictures on Facebook, I thought the beauty, the sunsets, the sunrises, and all the fun. What I didn't think about was the weather not always cooperating. So today we're going to hear the highs, the lows, the challenges, and all the unforgettable moments of life on the water. So today I have Valerie Aloisio and her husband, Andre Derry, who I've known this couple for, oh my gosh, it's got to be 10 years. And so they are no strangers to adventure. They have traveled extensively across the US and internationally. After a successful career in corporate America, Valerie ventured into entrepreneurship. The decision came while she was a busy single mom of two young children. She realized that this was not the lifestyle she wanted for her and her family. And then, after losing her mother at 59, Valerie focused in the entrepreneur world on health and wellness. And we'll hear a little bit about that because not everybody can pick up and take off for 6 months. So we're going to talk about how you manage that. Valerie, welcome to Inspired Travels with Patti.
Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for having me. Am I coming
I'm
through loud and clear?
You are coming through loud and clear. Thank you
Good.
for being here. So tell us about your travels. When did you start traveling? Has
Oh,
this
wow.
been an always thing?
Well, no, actually, raising a family and stuff like that, traditional, lifestyle. It wasn't until my kids were a bit older and I joined the world of network marketing or direct sales, relationship sales, got out of the corporate arena and became my own boss, became an entrepreneur that a whole new world opened to me. I was in my early 40s when I traveled for the first time to Europe. So, that was, yes, I traveled with my family when we were kids, cross country to California, did Florida, those, national things. But I always loved the idea of going international. And when I joined my first direct sales company, they had an international convention slated for that later that year, and I to Germany. And I said, "Oh my God, this is my chance to get to Europe." And so I figured out what those qualifications were. I made sure I won the trip, and went to Europe for the first time ever, and that just opened up a whole want within me to experience culture. Because going to Europe is very different than the States. We have so many beautiful places in the States, and we've been blessed to travel pretty much throughout the States. But now to say that we've traveled pretty much all through Europe, and Japan and Mexico and a lot of the islands and Iceland, just beautiful places. And there's a lot more on my bucket list. I'll have you know that. But 10 years plus ago, we started sailing. And we were able to purchase our sailboat with dear friends of ours, my husband's best friend. My husband's Canadian from Montreal. So they live up there. And we decided to make Lake Champlain our home for our boat. So we've been sailing. And I grew up with motorboats, so I never sailed. So this was something new for me to learn. And so we sailed for the last, several years, plus, I don't know, 7, 8 years. On Lake Champlain. And it was a dream of, especially the couple that we bought the boat with, Michelle, he's a consummate sailor. It was a dream of his to, when he retires, to take the boat down, to the Caribbean, because he always watched a lot of those shows like Below Deck and all those others.
So it's one thing when it's a couple and one person's trying to convince the other person, hey, like in my case, hey, let's sell everything and travel in an RV full time. And literally, I laughed. I thought Dan was kidding. I'd never really spent time in an RV. Now you want to travel full time. So now, not only is it you and Andre, but you have this other couple,
Yeah.
and the couple comes to you and says, "Let's sail from New York down to the Bahamas." What was your? I want to hear your response. What was the
Well, it
reaction?
wasn't. It was always something we all discussed, the four of us. Like, remember, for the past, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, we've been sailing on weekends. We would go up and spend a week on the boat, during boating season, May through September, right? Because it gets cold up there sooner.
Mhm.
So it was always something we discussed. It really was something. Oh, yes, one day, one day, one day. Wouldn't that be fun? Because we would spend the weekends together, maybe a week together. And of course, that's so much fun. You're eating, you're drinking, you're having fun, you're sailing, going to Burlington, all nice little places on the lake. It's a huge lake. So, but then, um, Michelle had a health scare. You see, it always takes something, right? There was a health scare, and it's always one day, one day, one day, right?
Right.
Someday, one day, someday. Well, someday became, let's do this now. You start to realize at our age that, life is short, your kids are now starting to get grown or becoming grandparents,
Mhm.
we're in our 60s. And so it was really, it was a decision that we just said, okay, you know what? Let's do it. And this was, 2 years ago now. I can't believe the time has come. But we spent a year pretty much planning for it, though, Patty. This was the thing. So it's not something you just up and go.
Right. And I want to talk about the preparation part of it, but I also want to go back a little bit
Okay.
because I think this is a great lesson. It's why I'm doing this podcast because there is always that someday I'll travel, someday I'll do this, that, or the other. Um, and so it's really important to me because I hear story after story after story of people who lost, somebody retired and then they passed away, or parents who passed away young, like your mother passed away relatively young.
Yeah.
So the message of someday, were you really, when you guys talked about this, did you really feel like you were going to do this, or was it so far down the road it wasn't a real thought?
It's interesting you said that because my husband didn't think that this would be for me. Like, he's like, there's no way that you're going to be able to be in a confined spot, blah, blah, blah. And I was the one that said, come on, Michelle, you just had this scare, let's do this. And because here's the thing, Andre and I are self-employed, as you know, so we get to, build our business wherever we are, which is a beautiful thing. I'm so glad I made that decision 25 years ago because we were able to. And then Sonia and Michelle, they were at getting close to retirement age. So he decided to take a leave of absence from work. His wife was, she's self-employed, so it was okay for her. And we said, okay, we're going to do this. It was the winter of 2023, I guess. So that whole summer, like that whole, summertime, I guess, we were re-outfitting the boat to be able to have this journey.
Let's talk about the preparation because it's not just the physically preparing the boat, but mentally. So Andre didn't think this would be something you would do, just like Dan wasn't sure about me being in an RV. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about me being in an RV. Wait, nobody was sure about the idea of me being in an RV because you don't know what it's like till you do it. So let's talk about some of the mental, emotional preparation. We're talking about life on the sea.
Yeah.
So what, and you said you did a year of preparing.
Yeah, well, because had been sailing for several years, and I grew up always on a boat and loving the water and respecting the water. Um, this was we just said, okay, we're going to do it. This is the time to do it. And with technology, like I said, we can do our business wherever. Michelle was able to take a leave of absence, and so we said, okay, this journey is going to begin. September 11th, 9/11, because our son got married on the 10th up in Monty. So that was it. So that whole summer, pretty much prior to, that whole spring and summer, um, we were preparing the boat, like Andre would go up like all the time to Plattsburgh. I would be working, or whatever, and he would be spending a lot of time. Like we really we we brought in compost heads so we wouldn't have to go to pump out. So we changed all that. That gave us a whole bunch of storage space. I mean, we really, I must say, my husband's very good with organization and things like that. Both he and Michelle really made a plan to make sure the boat was outfitted properly for the four of us to be on the boat for that long, safety wise, provision wise, all that. So you know, all that time gave us an opportunity of being together because I would go up and help or whatever, and then we would talk about it, and it was becoming a reality. And then we started to think about, wow, I mean, we're best friends, but like even family. I mean, how long can you be together? And so we talked about there's going to be times where we're probably not going to like each other much. We're going to have issues. We're going to have things. We're going to need our own space. And 42-foot thing is not too small, but it's not like 100-foot yacht, but it's nice size. We each had our own bedrooms, our own staterooms, our own bathrooms, like we had our own space. However, we talked about it and we said that no matter what, we're going to come back best friends. We'll get through what we have to. We don't want to talk to each other for whatever. We want to say a few words, whatever, but we're best friends. And so that mutual respect had to be there, that emotionally, when you're away from family for that long, it can be tough. And for them more so because they had a new grandbaby or two at home, so thank God for technology, FaceTime, whatever, but she was really missing her grandbabies, and I was missing the family and, but the adventure was so worth it because, we can get into that later, but it was really something else.
Right.
And I knew that we would be coming home. So you made a decision to, okay, now let's sell everything and just live the art life, which I actually have at least a dozen people that I know that have done that, believe it or not.
Very different animal, very different when you're going to come home to the house. Again, the preparation, so mentally.
Yeah.
And people ask me, when I talk about going into an RV, and I would imagine it's the same for you. Was it scary? Yes, it was scary. There were so many what ifs and things you don't know what you don't know. So all
Yeah.
the planning in the world, but there are things that happen or stuff that comes up that you just don't know. There's only so much you could read about and
Yeah.
watch YouTube videos about. So a big thing that you and I have talked about a lot is yes, things are scary and you do it anyway is kind of the message. And this idea of not waiting is certainly a big message for us. When you and I met, things were not good for Dan and I financially, and we were looking for other answers. And
Yeah.
yeah, you take that leap, and I took that leap probably 15 years ago it actually has been.
I know.
And decide that, my day-to-day just wasn't working. So with anything, the point here is with anything, even though you're scared, there are things you're going to learn, there are mistakes you're going
Yeah.
to make. You jump in and do it. I want people to not wait. You said at our age. I want people to not wait till
Yeah.
they're our age.
Hey,
I want
listen.
people to not wait for that scare.
Yeah. You know what? And that's usually what happens, right? We've seen that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what was so refreshing being on the, at our marina and meeting when we were traveling down in the Bahamas, we saw quite a few young families, homeschooling their children. So here we were talking about our generation, okay, retirement age, whatever, doing whatever. But there are people out there. And you see it sometimes on these YouTubers or on shows, whatever. But we met real life people that had children, a dog,
Right.
whatever, on a boat smaller than ours, living life. They didn't want traditional schooling for their kids. We had great conversations. They wanted to homeschool, and they homeschooled. We again with technology, homeschooled their children. They weren't just out vagabond, whatever. They were homeschooling. They were whatever, and they made a decision to take the year to do it.
And there are ways. There's certainly a lot, within the RV community. I saw a lot of people homeschooled. There's so many programs out there. And for anybody thinking about doing this that has children, there are a lot of programs for kids to be homeschooled, or there's all different names for it now too. And so I think the experience for children is amazing,
Yeah.
whether you're on a boat or in an RV, the things that you can see and teach your kids,
Yeah.
and again, that's not for everyone. Some kids going into a classroom every day is better. You're preparing, you took a year to prepare. What were some of the more complicated? What are some of the things that you did to prepare that you would, recommend, give some suggestions? I love how you said you talked to your friends about we are best friends, we're going to remain
Yes.
best friends. And it's almost silly as that sounds, you have to set those parameters before you, I think even with a couple, you have to set those
Oh, for sure,
parameters.
for sure. And those kind of like times, those like uncomfortable times were few and far between. I mean, like two or three, like, where you're disagreeing about something or this or that. Because remember, it's about safety. Like when you're out in the seas, and you don't see, anything for miles, especially we had a few of those moments when you're crossing over through the Atlantic to the Bahamas. It can be pretty scary. I mean, you're just this little nothing in the midst, and you really realize just how small, you are. Um, anyway, but then again, the excitement of seeing land and then, doing all that. But you know, again, I think it's really important. Like we all made sure that we were up on our, CPR and, making sure we knew first aid and different things like that. And making sure we were always with our life jackets on. And, there were certain like must do's to ensure our safety, right? Our safety, lifelines attached when the weather was bad, just different things where people take for granted. We made sure that that wasn't the case, and the dinghy was perfect and functional and because you prepare for the things you don't want to ever happen, and hopefully they don't. Because you see capsized boat, you see things. There are accidents out there, just like there is on land. You know,
Mhm.
so we made sure that we outfitted the boat. Like we said, we went to composting instead of having to go to pump outs, and that was just amazing. People like wow, and so I recommend that for people. And I mean, I know in RVs they do a lot of that, but so that was cool, and just being able to provision properly, kind of think of what we're going to need. Not that you can't go grocery shopping and stuff when you get to the islands, but it's very, very different than here. Again, we don't take things for granted when you're going to some smaller communities and what we're used to.
Let's talk about the beauty. You get in the
Yeah.
boat in New York, in the sailboat in New York, and let's talk about some of the amazing things, the amazing adventures, the beauty of it, because then we're going to talk about some of the challenges.
But we'll start from the beginning. I mean, of course, we left Lake Champlain, and you have to, for those that maybe know or don't know their area, you come down this big, big lake, and then you have to go through the locks to head into the Hudson River. Okay. And the Hudson River comes down into New York. So just, you're going through like Poughkeepsie and Newburgh, like there's just down the Hudson through the Adirondacks is just beautiful. Okay. For people who've never been, it really is quite stunning. So that was an experience having to deal with the lock system, that was pretty cool, how to maneuver that. And so then you end up into New York Harbor and the Statue of Liberty and the buildings of Manhattan. And that was just, how many times have I gone over the George Washington Bridge? Well, we anchored under the George Washington Bridge one night. How cool was that? I mean, for people who maybe don't know the area, they don't think that it's that cool, but I'm sure you do because you're a native to the
So
So
people who don't know the area, go look at pictures and
yes,
videos.
yes, yes, and I
Or-
have just many, many pictures. But so going through New York City and day and night, just seeing the buildings and everything, the skyline lit up. It was just stunning from that point of view. So I think that was one of the highlights. And then of course, maneuvering our way around that, and we decided to come up to we have a summer home in Connecticut. That's where we live in Connecticut. Um, so we brought the sailboat up to our beach house in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. So we had to come through the Long Island Sound, so we had to go around Manhattan, up the East River into the Long Island Sound. So that was all pretty cool, very cool. And then having our boat here so family can see it and friends and stuff like that. We spent a couple of weeks here. And then actually now, like this, it was a couple days ago, we then provisioned up the boat here in Connecticut and started our journey down south. We got on the boat and crossed over back out the Long Island Sound through the Verrazano Bridge into the Atlantic, and then through, first stop Atlantic City, and then, continued down the Intracoastal, which was we did some blue water sailing, but pretty much we got into the Intracoastal, and we went and be able to experience all that going through the, Maryland and the Carolinas, and then, Georgia and Florida, so just stopping in so many, like Charleston, Savannah, Annapolis. We went to the boat show there that year. I mean, it was really cool, really cool.
So to understand this, and again, thinking about RVs, I would drive, I never drove, but we would drive for 4 or 5 hours sometimes, or go from one state to another and then stay somewhere overnight or a couple weeks. When you're out in the boat, you're picking ports to go into and stop at. You're not stopping every night. You're just, I guess, when you're sleeping. So I know nothing about.
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, very good. But we made a point, because remember, this was a journey. We weren't rushing, to get to a place.
Right.
So and safety was always first. So we were not, even though people do that and transition boats down south in a couple of days, they have cruise and they go through the night through the ocean and they're there, right? That wasn't our situation. Every night we were going to stop, and we didn't always go to a marina. We would just anchor or take a mooring ball or something. Yes, we planned the stops along the way. So we always had a destination. And we would stop and for the night or get up early the next morning, very early, sometimes before sunrise, and start heading out again. And so everything was planned, and then for the most part, especially going through the Intracoastal and everything else, we held, we had that plan until we got down to Florida, and then we have to cross over, the Atlantic to the Bahamas. You have to wait for a certain weather window. And we were stuck in Fort Lauderdale for like 2.5 weeks because the weather was not cooperative. To a couple of times we attempted to cross in 7, 8 foot, 10-foot waves, like, that. No, I guess we're not going any place now, So we had to wait for Mother Nature to say, okay, now it's a good time.
Now you said you left it in September. That's hurricane season, right?
Yeah, it was the end of September. I think that was kind of the time. Thankfully, there wasn't, we had some squally weather, but nothing major, thankfully.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, and there's like certain things, like you're not supposed to travel past the whatever meridian until a certain day, and we planned accordingly for certain things, for boat insurance wise and everything else. So again, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of charting, there's a lot of all that goes in. Now, of course, there's advancements in technology where you can use your iPad, your phone, you can, you have your radar, you have everything else. And believe you me, it's needed, because there are days where you couldn't see from me to you because the fog was like pea soup and, bad weather and stuff. So you rely on your instruments, of course. So it's not all glamorous all the time.
Right. And that's why I wanted to set up with the beauty. And you said you got up sometimes before sunrise and you took off. And so watching the sunrise has to be amazing.
Oh, yeah. And sunrises and sunsets and things like that. And just visiting all these little communities like Alligator Alley. Guess what? There are alligators in Alligator Alley.
Yes,
you don't want to be like in the water. But they're such beauty, from quaint little cities or towns to just rural, like nothing for your eyes can see, marshland, as you start to get down south in Georgia and things like that. It's just like you see these things in movies, but like you're really experiencing. I mean, sometimes at night, you're just anchored and you're like, oh, what's around? I don't know what's around. Or, people, oh, what about people coming onto your boat? Or are you afraid? No, I mean, I think if you get too fearful, you'll never do anything, you guys. So
exactly. And that's what we talked about. And that's what, long ago. And for people who don't know, you were one of my mentors. Just to give the background, I was a teacher for 20 years. I had my master's degree, continued on, almost my doctorate degree. I keep saying I'm 3 classes and a dissertation away from my doctorate degree. And I knew it wasn't working. And, fear, because this is what I had planned my life to be. And when I met you, it was more about, fear. And so you and Andre were definitely the first 2 people that got me to think outside the box of being a teacher for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
that was a big thing, and overcoming the fear and just
Yeah.
stepping out.
We all go through that journey, right? Whenever we have some life changes. I mean, I was a single mom of 2 little kids, leaving corporate America to start my own business. Well, I had no background in that, so talk about fear and then of course you lose a loved one. There's depression that sets in, different things that we have to just overcome. And, it's not easy at all. And when you go through things like that, so I get it. And I'm glad I experienced all that, because I wouldn't be where I am today, or having conversations like with you, if I didn't take that leap of faith and step outside of my comfort zone to talk to you about, hey, that there are possibilities. And even doing something like selling your home and moving into an RV, or us taking a 6-month journey, hello, how do you do that? Well, you don't always have to worry about the how. You just have to make a decision, tell the world, and then figure it out as you go.
And understand that when you tell the world and they laugh at you, you keep going anyway,
Yeah,
because
for
that
sure.
happens. It's like and certainly when you started out, I didn't just say, "Let me sell everything, let me drop everything." I stayed working as a teacher for for me, it was a
Yeah.
few years. It was honestly sucking the life out of me, so I knew I had to make a change. So there were some baby steps there. I don't think most people go out and just say, "Let's sell everything, buy an RV." There are some steps there
Yes.
and I just want people to know that they don't have to make a huge decision to quit their job, go in an RV, sailing for 6 months. Take some little steps and go
Exactly.
out with there is and enjoy life. Let's talk about it. It's a question I would get asked all the time being in an RV. How do you go grocery shopping? You obviously had a full kitchen with a freezer with meat, so you could cook. You had full ability to cook. Where do you go grocery shopping?
We provisioned before we left Connecticut. And then, of course, along Annapolis, I mean, there's cities that we're in, right? So you would go to a grocery store or a Costco and then provision up, right? And then that would last you until, you got to your next port or whatever. Of course, when we were in Florida, we provisioned as much as we could before crossing into the Bahamas. Now, it's so funny because we had way too much stuff that we thought, oh, we're not going to ever have this, that, or the other thing. I mean, even getting water is up there because, you have to pay for water.
So in an RV, there is a tank of water, fresh water. Is there that on a boat, or you
Yes,
have
you
to
could
bring
fill
all
up
the
your
water?
tanks with water. Yes. Or if you're at a marina, you could hook right up to the city water and then you're not using your tanks. But
Okay.
when you get to the
Now
Bahamas, oh, go ahead.
the other question is, how long did it take to get from Florida to the Bahamas? How long was that journey?
Oh, well, once we were able to cross, I mean, it was really a couple, like 2 days to Bimini, and
You
then,
did.
and then, so it's due. Yeah. Yes. And we installed a water filter. So our water was filtered. Like we would fill up our tanks and then the water was filtered. So we didn't want to we didn't want to buy bottled water and stuff like that. Of course, we had provisions for that should we need it. Um, and, but then, here's what you had to do. You had to get on your dinghy, go to shore, go shopping, and then bring everything back on the dinghy. Same with your laundry. We didn't have a washer dryer on the boat. We had to go to a laundromat. I think that was the first times going to a laundromat my whole life. I don't, so I mean, so you had those excursions to the shopping center to get your groceries or to do your laundry. But one day, it was a beautiful day, Patty. We were like, okay, we're going to go get our groceries. And the 4 of us end up in the dinghy and we go and get our groceries and we're coming back and the sky is turning black. This was not forecast. There was no rain in the forecast. So we had to get back to the boat. So we had to get on the dinghy. Torrential downpour, torrential. Like the Scott towel was floating in the dinghy. And all of our food, like I mean, that was a pretty scary thing because it came. We we probably should have waited it out or something. I don't know, but it is what it is. You didn't know until, and we had a little bit of a distance to get to our boat from where we had an anchor. So that was a very interesting, fun, scary at the same
Right.
time experience. You
Right.
just spend all this
You
money
collect
on some
that.
groceries, and you don't want
Right.
it floating out of the dinghy.
No, no, that's rule number one. And you can laugh about it now. I'm sure you weren't laughing then.
No, no, no. It was
Well,
cold.
let's
It was like rainy. It
uh,
was like scary, and you couldn't see where the boat was as a,
right.
So, but anyway, so that was one of those experiences.
Not the fun part of the journey. And again, I think the same thing when people hear about the things in an RV that happen that could go wrong. You got to decide, does the good outweigh the bad? And that's why, I wanted to share those beautiful moments. But
Yeah,
there are always going to be in life, that is just how life is. There's going to be those challenges, those things that are just not fun.
yeah,
Let's talk about, first of all, community. One of the things people say in an RV, oh, you're going to be away from family, which, at times we were, and you're going to be alone. There's no community. Now you were on board with your best friends, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes not so good. Is there a community around boating?
Oh, of
People who
course. Just
are on
like there is,
board?
I'm sure, with RV,
Mhm.
it's a huge, huge community. And that was very comforting. I mean, we actually, when we were in Florida waiting for that weather window, we met other boaters that were doing the same thing. So we actually created like a buddy system. If you can, have some buddy boats as you're maneuvering. So we always did that as we maneuvered across to the Bahamas. And then while we were in the Bahamas, going to the different islands of the Bahamas, we always had one or two buddy boats. Like we kind of make friends with some people, and
Mhm.
then you're going on the same journey, and so that was nice because then we would go into explore an island, and there'd be more, a couple more couples or whatever too, and we would have dinners together. So there, of course, there's a huge community, and certainly down when you get down to Georgetown and everything else. I mean, there's so many boaters. I mean, because the season is what it is. And there's so many boaters that are down there and packed harbors. So you're meeting a lot of great people from all over the place that sail. I did never knew it was so big, whatever. But it is just like RV life is for those that experienced it.
Yeah.
More importantly was meeting the locals, meeting,
Yeah.
yes, you're with yourselves, but we believe very much in getting out and meeting the locals and living the local life. I mean, yes, we came back to sleep on our boat, but we were in the communities and meeting the people and, hanging out. And I have to say, beautiful people, I really enjoyed that and always felt people say, weren't you scared being all this crime here? And Nassau is really bad. Yeah, there's areas just like in New York or any place else in inner cities, there's going to be areas, right? So you just stay smart and you're careful and you do what, stay away from areas where the people say, no, that's a crime area or whatever. But for the most part, we always felt very safe and met some beautiful people. And that is really what I would tell people to do when they're looking to venture out is not to be afraid to connect, right? I mean, this world that we're living in with AI and all, you don't know what's real, what isn't, and everyone's saying, you know what, enough online, let's just get together. We have to have a sense of community. And I think after COVID and everyone going online, that I think people are realizing a few years later now, at least that's what I feel, is that people want to get back to the way it was before, you know, all this great technology, because people are missing so much when it comes to socialization, I think.
I totally agree 100%.
Yeah.
People talk about, again, traveling in an RV. What are those big places? I tell people when we started out, Dan's idea was to go to every national park in the country. And to date, I've been to 0. And a lot of that was because we would go to the little towns and experience the local, culture and what they were doing and the different foods. And those things just became so much
Yeah.
bigger and more important. Now, not to say I don't want to get into some of the national parks, but that wasn't necessarily the focus. It was about experiences. We would go into towns that nobody's had really heard of. And just some of the things we saw and did was just not something that was on the bucket list. It wasn't on the list. We didn't,
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. And it sounds like the same thing within the sailing community.
Yes.
Really getting out, being present. I'm not going to
Yeah.
go on a soapbox, but yes, we need to get back to connecting.
Yeah.
And community sounds like community when you're sailing in the boat world is similar to the RV world. For me, like you said, I miss the idea of family. For us, it was full time. So we made plans to come back to the area. We spent a whole summer in the area
Yeah.
where the kids were. We had the ability to go visit the kids that were scattered across the country. And sometimes we just, leave the RV and fly and see family. So that
Sure.
is one of the things, that you kind of plan. I know people in RVs that, every month and a half they're flying to see the grandkids or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
There's ways to make it work for
Yeah.
sure.
For sure.
Now, I want people to be able to connect with you, but we're not finished because we do
Okay.
have to talk about the fact that not only were there 4 people, 4 human beings, there was a dog on board. So
Aw.
we're going to talk about that and so much more. Where can people reach out to you? I'm sure people are going to have questions.
Oh, well, they could just reach out to me at you can put my email there, my first and last
Okay.
name at Gmail. People could certainly reach out to me there. Um, ValerieAloisio.com. That's my website. And you can, certainly call me or reach out because, yeah, it really was a lot of fun.
Right. Right. We'll put all of that in the show
Okay.
notes. Let's talk about the dog. I want to
Um,
talk about the fact that you were able to do this because, you were able to work remote, which
mhm.
is, again, a question people get in an RV. So Monty was
Yeah.
on board. Monty is a little, what was he?
Yes,
What's
yes. And
the
for the audience, this is a hard thing for me because
sorry.
he did cross the rainbow last week. He was 17 and a half and just gave us so much love for those years. We miss him so, so much. It still hurts more than I can
Yeah.
say. But anyway, the thing 2 years ago, and Monty was always very healthy. He just got old. Look, he's like almost 90 in human years. And his body was giving out, and it was time. But 2 years ago, he was dancing on a sailboat in the Bahamas and swimming and exploring because he was only a 7 pound sharky, and so he came with us all over the place, and when we had to do provisioning, he stayed on the boat. And I mean, look, people were shocked that this, our pet came with us. But there are quite a
Right.
few of people that have pets, I'm sure, in RVs and boats and stuff like that we would say. Monty was not the only one. But
Right. But
yeah.
but in an RV, I could take him outside. So you had to
Yeah.
figure out what to do. How did you manage that? People
Well,
are
it's so
thinking, "Oh, I'd
true.
like
I
to
mean,
do this."
Monty at 16 years old, what was he, 15 and a half, 16 at the time? He had to relearn how to use a pee-pee pad.
Oh,
We had to
yes.
retrain him to
What?
can't go out when we were in port and stuff like that. Of course, we walked him and he went outside, and he got his grass time. But he had to learn to we would set the pee-pee pad up in our shower, and that's where he would go and he prance himself. And he learned. He had a few little accidents, but that's okay. But he learned that this is what was his space now, and that was really. And yeah, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, you can.
Right.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was so special that he was there with us, especially so now that we don't have him. And it's hard,
Right.
right now. But we were so glad that he was with us on that journey. Thank you for mentioning it, Patty.
Yes. And I'm sorry. He was the sweetest little dog, and we
Yeah.
won't go too far. I don't want this to get emotional.
Okay.
Um, it's tough. when somebody's, an animal's part of your
Oh
family.
yeah.
So yeah, he was a cutie, and
Yeah.
we're gonna put some pictures in
Okay.
the
Yeah.
we'll have on social media, we'll have pictures in the YouTube video. We're gonna put pictures of not only Monty, but you guys and
Okay. Yeah.
the boat, and
Yeah,
so
and
people
if
can
anyone has
hopefully
questions
see.
that we can help with, of course, we would love to provide that perspective in more detail, whatever questions people have. Anybody wants to know about, okay, well, how did you know, change your career to have the
Right,
flexibility? We
right.
can show you how to do that also.
Yeah.
So,
As we're starting to wrap
yes.
up, we're not finished yet, but we're gonna start wrapping up. Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that because, again, the 4 of you had the flexibility to go out. You said you used Starlink, which is something
Yeah.
that we use in RVs, so that seemed to be the great Wi-Fi
Yes.
connection, whatever the word is, internet system, so it works out on a boat, which is good to know. I'm sure there are other
Yeah.
things that
I'm
people
sure maybe
use.
now, but that was great for us to stay connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did in the RV, but you were able to work from the boat. You guys didn't all just take 6 months off. You were able to work through being an entrepreneur. So just briefly, let's talk a little bit about that. And then, like you said, people could reach out to you
Yeah. Yeah.
because it gave you the freedom to go travel.
Yeah. 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 I know. It's been awesome. Being in network marketing, we have obviously a product that we are very passionate about. We launched the whole CBD, hemp derived CBD industry 10 years ago. So that's been very exciting. And from that, we're now in over 46 countries. So between times, using technology between time zones, and because we've developed a great business, we have leaders all over the country and around the world that, I figured that I tried to organize myself where I would show up on Zoom. And if I needed to travel someplace, I could always get on a plane and go. That wasn't something that I wanted to do because, especially when you're in the Bahamas, it's harder to get flights and different things. I did travel down to Mexico. Like we came home during a few weeks around Thanksgiving, to be with family. Like we left the boat in Florida before we made the journey across. And Thanksgiving, early Christmas for about a week. And then we got back on the boat. And during that time, I did a little bit of traveling before meeting them up before we crossed over. So you just try, with the flexibility of a business like this and having a great team of people and everything else, that it just allowed the opportunity. Now, if I was an accountant, or if I was, other types of jobs where you have to show up, it wouldn't be, or teach, like you couldn't do that. But in a business such as ours, where you can have the flexibility to work from wherever, it worked out really, really well. So, or people take sabbaticals, or people can,
Mhm.
there's a lot of ways that you don't have to quit your job to have
Right.
an adventure. Like Michelle went back to work. He took us a time off, and then he went back and he was able to get another job position within his company. So you never know. People, companies today are more, some of them are more oriented to work-life balance, and others are not. So, yeah.
Right, and from the entrepreneurial side, I know, again, for a lot of RVers, they're looking for ways to make money while on the road, and, if somebody wants to travel more or go out on a sailboat for a month,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like, so there's that opportunity, and people could reach out to you and talk
Sure.
about that.
Happy to talk about it or guide you. I have so many friends in this type of industry. It all just depends on what you're interested in. I'm in the health and wellness arena. Somebody may be interested in makeup or something. I don't clothing. There's a lot of different companies where you can be an entrepreneur and still reach out and connect with people. So, but for those that are interested in health and wellness and are very interested in that, hemp and cannabis space, I'm your girl.
There you go. So as we wrap up, are there any last thoughts that you have that we didn't cover, something else you want to share? Did we get it all covered?
I think we did, Patty. I just tell everyone, just take a leap of faith. If you have a dream, work towards that dream, right? Life is short. I don't want to get myself all upset, but it is. We've all lost loved ones. We have had hopefully few and far between illnesses or this or that or challenges in life, right? We all have had them, some more than others. Um, but if there's something that you really want to do, make a decision, tell the world that that's what you're going to do, and then figure it out. There is a plan. There are ways. There is information out there. You just have to kind of take that leap of faith. And if you can, get a buddy to do it with you, or there are plenty that do it on their own, fine. It just depends what kind of person that you are, what your life is, throwing at you. Just do it. Look at you, Patti. I'm so proud of you. I mean, going from school teacher to entrepreneur to now podcaster extraordinaire in the travel space. I mean, hello. I mean, that's wonderful. I think just the world is so beautiful with all the chaos and stuff. The world and the people are beautiful for the most part. So enjoy it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for saying that, because it's certainly the mission of this podcast. And, again, we want people to reach out. I'm on social media, Inspire Travels with Patti, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of your connection we'll put in the show notes. It takes that first step. I mean, and again, if nobody heard anything else on this whole podcast, even when you're scared and you're not sure of how, there are ways, just get started. So I want to thank you so much, Valerie, for being on, for sharing such an amazing adventure, giving my listeners so many incredible tips. I really appreciate you.
You as well. Thank you so much for having me, and go out and enjoy, everyone.
Yes, yeah. I want to thank my listeners. As I mentioned, there are episodes. I just posted an episode on hidden gems. So people who are looking for those out of the way places, there are actually 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2. If this podcast resonates, please hit the follow button. It's of great support to me. And for anybody who's looking for adventure, certainly share it. And I'm going to end with this thought: travel isn't just about where you go, it's about how you live each day to the fullest.